Hello, and welcome to this new lesson in the Permission System section, where we will discuss this fourth point, the creation and management of user groups. So we will explore what a SharePoint group is, examining it in depth before we conclude. By clearly distinguishing between the SharePoint group and the Office 365 group. So after learning what a SharePoint group is, we will move on to the group creation environment. We will configure the group settings, add users, and then clarify the distinction between the two types of groups. So we will see what a group is, which is a set of users assigned the same level of authorization. This means that in the company, there may be groups of people needing to use SharePoint in a specific way. We will assign these groups, once formed, a specific level of authorization without granting unnecessary permissions. Thus, we will access the group creation environment through the Site Permissions menu and by checking the Advanced Permissions settings. We will access the group creation and management environment. Then we will click on Create Group. And at this stage, we will configure all the group settings, especially the permission levels. Then we will add both individual users and Office 365 groups to the group. Finally, we will examine the distinction between the Office 365 group, which is a group of users belonging to the organization, and the SharePoint group, which is a group of users belonging to the organization with a specific level of permission, where there can be various individuals and multiple Office 365 groups. So now we're going to the SharePoint site, and we'll see how to actually create a SharePoint group. So let's click on the gear icon, then on Site Permissions, and finally on the Advanced Permission settings. And let's access the Advanced Settings area, where SharePoint first presents us with the list of groups. And there are, as you can see, the default groups that we discussed in the previous lesson. Members, owners, and visitors, each with their respective rights to edit, full control, and read. And then there's this management control group that I added in addition to those that are defaulted in SharePoint, and to which I assigned the levels of collaboration, reading, and warning. So what are groups for? For simplifying the management of permissions. In the sense that managing permissions, especially in a large company with many employees, it can be complicated to remember who has the authority to do what. To recall each person, to remember that on that day, that person should no longer have access to their content. So all of this can be managed by groups and permission levels. So if this group of people is only supposed to do this on the SharePoint site, for example, lists and document folders, it is not necessary to give them the power to work on web parts and pages. Because afterwards, they might go take a look inside. They could modify things they shouldn't be touching, or even access information they shouldn't be seeing. So to make this task easier, it is essential for the SharePoint administrator to set up groups and then assign them levels of access. Thus, the situation remains clear when we return to this environment. So, let's see how to establish a SharePoint group. So let's click here on Create a Group. I have created a management control group. Let's create an accounting group belonging to the accounting sector. Then we have the owner of the group. SharePoint defaults me as the account administrator, but of course, we can choose anyone as the owner of the group. In the sense that the SharePoint administrator, when he establishes the SharePoint group, he can also decide that this group will be managed by someone else. Managed for what purpose? Manage in terms of adding members and adding permission levels, if that was not enough. regarding the reduction of authorization powers, when we realize that the granted powers are actually excessive. So here we will add the group owner. We can only assign one person, no more than that. Because if I attempt to write another name, if I try to insert another name, it tells me that we can only enter one name. So let's say I'm going to cancel this. Let's keep my name, but any other name will do. It just needs to be chosen by the SharePoint administrator. And then we will make these additional configurations. So select the permitted users to show the group memberships. In other words, who can see who belongs to this group. Only group members or everyone, in other words, all members of the Office 365 ECS account. Here we will select it by checking this box or that one. Next, select the users who are allowed to modify the group members. Therefore, only the owner of the group can do this. Alternatively, group members can also add a member to this group. And even in that case, we will choose between this option or that one. Next, regarding membership requests, allow group membership requests or group removal requests. So I can allow it. I am the SharePoint administrator who sets up the group. I can allow people to request to join the group and to request removal. Then, these requests for membership or withdrawal, I can determine that they may be accepted automatically or must first be approved. Last thing, and of course not in order of importance, on the contrary, I would say this is the most important. It is the assignment of group permissions to the site, because we said that the group is effective in determining what this group of people can achieve. So what level of authorization does this group have? So without a doubt, the accounting group is fundamental. We'll certainly be interested to see what is happening within the accounting group, and he might also be interested in seeing what is happening in the warehouse, in the purchasing department, or even in another office where small purchases take place. For example, office supplies or other similar items that specifically relate to small purchases. It is likely that you will need to work on the lists. Therefore, you need to work on the lists. I will set this level of modification permission. Modification, which means that can add, modify, and delete lists, can view, add, update, and delete documents and list items. So for example, this permission for the accounting group, this may be appropriate. There is no need to grant complete control to the individuals in the accounting group. Of course, we could also provide it. But it is certainly a power that does not benefit them. Therefore, based on a general principle, it should not be granted to them. Thus, once we have made our choice, the appropriate authorization level for these individuals, of course, when I will establish these items, as I already know exactly what they contain, this is the authorization level. Otherwise, I will open the authorization levels and check them out. Once I finish, I click on Create, and at that moment, our new group was created. So let's go back to the groups. So let's return and refresh. And here is the accounting group that has been created with the modification permission level. Clearly, there is a summary of the authorization level here, if I may say so. As we observed in the previous lesson, if I had even a single doubt regarding what the modification authorization level includes. So what power does it confer to those who are assigned it? In the authorization levels, I switch to editing mode, and I see everything I have just allowed this group of people to do, that I referred to as accounting. Let's return to the list of groups. Let's go back. And now, let's look at how to add members to the group. So let's enter the group where we want to add members. Let's open what we just created, as you can see. SharePoint by default shows that I am the owner of the group because I created it and I am also an administrator. So by default, I am also a SharePoint administrator. So I'm going to click here on New, Add Users. And here I'm going to add all the users I want. For example, Christina, Bianchi, Rossi, Roberto. Then I can add entire groups. Office 365, For example, all the members of the Cardiology Congress group, training course, all members of the training group. And here I can add a message. You have been added to the SharePoint group, accounting with edit permissions on the lists. And at this point, I will share this message with 16 people. As you can see, all 16 people have been added to the group. Cristina Bianchi has been added. Roberto Rossi has been added. These two groups, Office 365, have been added. So all members who are part of these groups will be affected by Office 365. Then here, in Office 365, the operations are speculative. If I'm going to remove something in the environment regarding administration here, in the administration interface, I was going to say, we are already in teams and groups. You are going there to the Cardiology Congress. And if I were to register as a member and remove one of those members, I would obviously delete them from this group, as that person would not be part of the Office 365 group for the Cardiology Congress, and so would no longer have the powers that the Cardiology Congress group currently has among the members of the SharePoint and accounting group. And so this person would no longer obviously have the power to do what he had until then. And so after also learning how to add users, we will finally have a clear distinction between the Office 365 group and the SharePoint group, as we have now delved into the concept of the SharePoint group in the first section of this course. We have seen what an Office 365 group is. Let's quickly make a clear distinction, as it is very important, especially when creating SharePoint groups. Because, as we did some time ago, we also added entire Office 365 groups to this accounting group. So it's better not to confuse the two concepts. Otherwise, we might give power to the wrong person. We are going to assign a permission level to individuals with errors who shouldn't have it because it may not be of any use to them. Because these contents, these individuals absolutely should not see them within the company. So the Office 365 group is defined as a set of users, whether members or guests belonging to the organization. So those who are registered in the Office 365 account and have a profile there, if I take more users and form a group, it's an Office 365 group. Training course on cardiology. However, the SharePoint group has something additional. So far, right down to the comma, it is the same as the Office 365 group, which consists of users, members, or guests who belong to the organization, that is, the Office 365 account. However, it has distinctions based on a certain level of authorization to operate on the site collection or on a single SharePoint site. And here, as you can see, the two things are not equal at all. Here, I have two unique users of the Office 365 account, Cristina Bianchi and Roberto Rossi. Here, I have two groups of the Office 365 account, training courses for the Cardiology Congress. And together, these two groups and these two people make up the grouping constitutes the SharePoint Management Control Group that has this level of authorization. In fact, it has two, collaboration and reading and comments. So we have also covered this topic, and I'm waiting for you, so in the next lesson, we will address the last point. This refers to sharing documents with external users. I'll see you in the next lesson.